We're in the seventh chapter of Gittin, and we're getting into questions about conditional get, a conditional bill of divorce. Does it work? Does it not work? Let's just jump into the Mishnah and we'll see the kind of problems that the Mishnah is interested in. So a man says to his wife, Hare ze gitech im mati. This is your get if I die. Or he might say, Ze gitech me cholize. This is your get if I die from this illness. Or he might say, Ze gitech lachar mitati. This is your get after my death. And the Mishnah rules straight away, Lo amar klum. He hasn't said anything. Now, why hasn't he said anything? Well, we know it's a principle. It's an absolute principle of the halacha relating to divorce, that a divorce can't take place after death. A posthumous get, a posthumous bill of divorce is not a bill of divorce. So in principle, a divorce can be conditional, and we'll see later in the chapter that it can be conditional. In fact, we're going to see many examples of a conditional bill of divorce. But the condition has to be fulfilled before the death of the husband. He says, if this is your get if I die, it feels as if this condition is only fulfilled if he dies. In other words, the get becomes valid posthumously, and we can't have that. We can't have that. The get has to be valid from the day that he gives it, or from some other day anyway, which is before the date that he dies. Let's look at some more examples. Mehayom imati. It's valid from today if I die. Now, this is really interesting. He's handing over a conditional get. The condition is triggered when he dies, but it operates retroactively from the date that he gives it to her. We'll see another example, by the way, in Kiddushin, when we get into the Mishnah of Kiddushin. We'll see that, and Gittin and Kiddushin, the tractates of divorce and betrothal, are interestingly parallel. Many of the discussions about agency are played out in the tractate of Kiddushin, a betrothal as well. But anyway, he gives a get which is conditional on his death, but takes effect retroactively from the day that he gives it. And this seems to work. Similarly, if he says, Me'achshav imati, from now if I die. And the Mishnah rules, Hareze get. This works as a get. It works. The retroactive condition works, even if it's only fulfilled after his death. Mehayom la'achar mitati, from now to after my death. Now that is really an ambiguous construct. That's an ambiguous construct. And by the way, the normal printed text here just says it's ambiguous. It says get ve'eno get. It is a get and it isn't. It is and it isn't. Actually, our edition, the Kaufman just says eino get. It's not a get. This ambiguous condition, maybe it does take effect after he dies. This ambiguous condition doesn't seem to work. Although the Mishnah continues, both in the Kaufman and in the regular printed text, if he does die, she performs chalitza, but she doesn't perform yibum. So this does feel a bit like it's an ambiguous case. If there had been any doubt at all if there had been no doubt about the validity of the get, she would not have needed to perform chalitza. The fact that she performs chalitza suggests that there's a question mark about this get. And the fact that she's not permitted to perform yibum reminds us that it is partially effective. So it does seem to be this gray. See, this statement seems to be in a gray area. Hare ze gitech mehayom la'achar mitati, from today until after I die. This seems to be a gray area. What about if I make a get conditional on a particular illness? So a particular type of death. Harei zeh gitech mehayom. Here's your get from today. So we're going to make it operate retroactively. So that part is fine. Imati micholize. If I die from this illness. So maybe this is someone, I mean, today you could think about someone suffering from cancer, maybe who doesn't know whether he's going to survive the disease. He doesn't want his wife to be subject to levirate marriage, to yibum, so he makes sure that she has a retroactive get in place in case he dies. What happens? Ve'amad ve'halach bashuk. He got up and he walked around in the street, so he seems to have recovered. Ve'chala umeit, and then he got sick again, and then he died. So he seems to be sick and he seems to get better and then he dies. Well, what's the status of this get? It was conditional on a particular illness. And it looks like we're gonna make an assessment. We're gonna make an expert judgment. Omdim oto. Omdim here in Kaufman is spelled with an I, and actually to make an assessment is spelled with an aleph. So we seem to have a scribal error on Kaufman here, but we're giving you I'm faithfully giving you Kaufman in this podcast, in this class. So we're going with Kaufman, but it says omdim, but spelled with an ein. We assess him. We assess him to see, i.e., we assess his cause of death. We see whether he died from the first illness. If that's the case, Haray's a get. If he died from the first illness, it's a get. Ve'im la ve'no get. If he didn't die from the first illness, it's not a get. The bill of divorce doesn't stand. So we have this conditionality, this possible conditionality in the bill of divorce. And the Mishnah is going to ask, well, okay, what's the status of the marriage? What's the status of a marriage if the couple is living with a conditional divorce? Are they still married? Are they not married? Because remember, we've said that the divorce could take place retroactively from the date that it's given, even though the date when the condition that makes it take effect may not happen for many years in the future. So what's the status of the marriage? The Mishnah goes on to say, she shouldn't be alone with him, except in the presence of witnesses, i.e., they're not married. He can't have relations with her. In fact, we'll learn in the 8th chapter that if he does have relations with her, the get is completely invalid, completely invalidated. So he can't be alone with her. And any witness seems to work here. Afilu ever, afilu shifra, even a slave, even a handmaid, they make sure there's someone else in the room when they're together. The only exception, chutz mishifchata, except for her personal handmaid, mipnei sheliba gas b'shifchata, she can take liberties. I mean, clearly, gas, liba gas means her heart grows. Difficult to translate literally, but the sense is clearly that she might do something in front of her handmaid that she might not do in front of anybody else in the household. So that's the first halacha which the Mishnah articulates. She shouldn't be alone with him, i.e., they don't seem to be married. But the Mishnah then asks just slightly more expansively, Mahi b'otan hayamim, what's her status during those days? We're going to see a dispute between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi, whose voices are both very pronounced in this tractate. Rabbi Yehuda Omer ke'eshet ish l'chol davar. Rabbi Yehuda says she's a married woman in every respect. So he seems to disagree with the first statement in the Mishnah, or he seems to disagree. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Rabbi Yossi says, Mugoreshet ve'ena mugoreshet. Rabbi Yossi says she's both divorced and not divorced. I.e., we need to be strict on both counts. So Rabbi Yossi would clearly sympathize with the halacha given at the beginning of the Mishnah. She can't be alone with her husband without witnesses. But similarly, he would say, for example, if she's married to a Kohen, she can't eat truma. On the other hand, she's not divorced, so she can't marry anybody else. So she's in this unusual limbo situation where she's not completely married, but she's not completely divorced, and we, if you like, we take the most stringent of both of these possibilities.